Welcome to Transforming with Drew, where we talk about everything on the TQIA spectrum. And we are back today with Transforming with Drew, where we are going to be talking about Cat Cattinson's wonderful experience, and also you can find him on Spotify as Cat Robot, right?
Right.
Would you like to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Cat, and I am a female detransitioner. So I once started to transition to male, and for various reasons, I just realized it wasn't the right choice for me. And the main thing was my singing voice, which I'm sure we'll go into more detail later. But so I decided to detransition, and I'm now living as a woman again. So it's basically everything in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, and full disclosure with this, as I keep telling everybody about this podcast, we are here to educate people, to normalize everything that is in part of the LGBTQ community. We need to understand that everybody's stories matter. So, Kat, when did you first start playing with the idea of transitioning? And tell me about some of the people that were a part of it that influenced when you started to transition before we started.
Sure. So I actually questioned my gender pretty young. Like I think I was like 4 or 5. And some of my earliest memories are like wanting to be a boy. I used to dress up as my dad when I was like a toddler, and I would like put on his clothes and his shoes, and I looked ridiculous because I was like tiny. But I live in a small town, and my parents and honestly nobody I knew was educated about trans issues, so they didn't even know that it was like it would be possible for me to transition or anything. So I just didn't even know it was like a possibility until puberty, so around like 12 or 13. And then I found a website online where people were talking about transitioning from male to female, and at the time I really clicked with that, and felt like I might want to pursue that someday. Um, and then, around that time, I also met a few other people my age who, one was a trans man, and then one of my best friends actually ended up coming out as trans as well. So, but it was around like 17 that I started to take things more seriously, and my parents kind of realized like it wasn't a phase, and they took me to a gender therapist at that age and stuff too.
Now let's talk a little bit more about what the gender therapist did for you or did not do for you, because this is something that I heard you talk about a lot on TikTok. By the way, that's how we met, because I like to find notable people though and talk to about their experience there. So what did they do for you, or what did they not do for you?
So obviously I'm speaking about this one person and not, all gender therapists, because I've only ever been to one that was specifically for gender, but he was really not a good fit for me, and I think I kind of knew that from the first session. But I just, he is like very acclaimed in the area where I had to drive an hour to see him actually, but in like the Sacramento area, he's like their head honcho over there, and so I just kind of trusted it, and I was like, he knows what he's talking about. But for me, I just didn't feel that it was a good fit because I felt like it was kind of rushed. I had a lot of other kind of mental health issues that I feel like we didn't talk about enough. And it was just, I felt like he was solely focusing on me feeling like I was trans, and kind of like overlooked a lot of issues that I also needed help with. And just kind of like he suggested already starting hormones within like 1 or 2 sessions. Like it happened really fast. And so, even at that age and like me thinking I wanted to transition, like it was just a little bit weird for me. And then of course, like my parents weren't on board, and I still had to live with them. So I did end up holding off for a few more years on actually starting medical transition, which I'm happy that I did. But yeah, I just felt like it was rushed, and that I didn't feel like he was really hearing me. I feel like he was sort of going through some talking points that he was just sort of accustomed to doing, and like not really, like for instance, I had an eating disorder that I was really suffering from too, and I don't feel like he was really hearing that.
How are you feeling about that, reflecting upon it now?
Um, I think for a bit, like I was angry at some of the providers that I've had, but honestly, like I'm at peace with it now, and I do believe that like there needs to be better therapy and better medical care like available, but I would not be where I am now without everything that I've been through, and I do feel like I'm at a really good place now in terms of like myself and body acceptance and all of that. So I think I needed to go like what I went through to get here, but obviously it sucked for a lot of reasons too, but I'm not like angry anymore, or like I don't have any like anger or bitterness towards any of these providers anymore.
I completely understand that. I've had my fair share of some pretty, let's just call them interesting therapists. Call them interesting. Um, I've had so many therapists misdiagnose me with so many things that didn't even make sense for like the longest time. And I think it's sometimes when they are stressed and they're rushed and they're pushed to the max, it's just more check the box and move on, move on. And that's really not what we need for people who are going through a lot of serious stuff. Like you're sitting there telling me that, you had an eating disorder. Now I actually have, that's my minors, like I'm in health and nutrition and eating disorders. And that's extremely important that people don't understand is before you do any type of, whether it's transition or anything, you kind of have to manage those eating disorders so that way the person can thrive. And that's a huge thing you need to work on mentally. How do you think you've maintained working on that since you were 17?
Um, it's been very up and down for me. I've had a lot of relapses and periods of like doing better. Um, I've had some issues with addiction as well, that kind of started after I was 17. And, my dysphoria was definitely feeding into that. But, honestly, in some ways, I feel like me realizing that transitioning wasn't the right thing for me and just coming to this place of, because in addition to my voice, like I did have some health side effects as well from the tea. And I think it was related to having an eating disorder in the past as well, and like the damage that I had already done to my body from that. But I just came to this place where I was like, I want my body to like last as long as it can, and I want to feel good. And I really feel like I was put on this earth for music and to share that with others and like inspire others. And so I just want to be able to like live on this planet and do that for as long as I can. And so I just came to this place of like, I still have negative thoughts and I have toxic thoughts about my body, but I just do a lot of meditation and yoga as well. And so just coming from this mindset of health and longevity has really helped me to not really entertain like the eating disorder thoughts, or like toxic body thoughts and all of that. So, but especially like meditation has been a huge help for me. Like I go to therapy too now, but honestly, like it's meditation and then therapy. Like for me, that's really what has worked.
Yeah, I have this new adopted thought pattern that I've been doing that's been really helping me a lot. Is like we may not always control our first thought, but we can control our second and
Mm-hmm.
our fourth. And I think once we realize that, I think it's where we can come into a sense of peace. But meditation definitely helps, especially for like I have like ADD and ASD and all this fun stuff. So it's like everything's like going crazy. So meditation is so helpful. All right, so when did you start actually medically transitioning?
So I started medically transitioning in 2020.
Okay.
And it was a long thought process for me. Like I did spend, um, well, there were a few years where I was just not ready to like face my gender dysphoria, and I was living as a woman, but I was like really pushing down my feelings that, I was not happy with my body. I was not happy with myself. I wanted to express myself in a more masculine way, but I felt like that was really closed off to me, like it wasn't an option. And but then finally in like 2020, I think lockdown had something to do with it too, because it kind of forced me to sit with my feelings. And I was finally just like, I've done everything I can as female and I'm not happy. And so I at least want to give this a try. And, but I did think there was going to be like some type of process to go through. Like I thought I would have, um, like the provider I went to, for instance, like I thought there'd be some kind of like assessment process. Um, and it was like really quick for me getting them. So again, like, I felt like from the time where I was like, okay, I think I want to try this to like actually obtaining the testosterone was just like really, really quick. So I was kind of like, wow, that was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Do you think that if it was longer, it maybe would have saved you from actually going and starting testosterone, or do you think you still would have been where you are now?
I'm not sure, but I definitely think it might have. Like if I had known certain things like about what could happen to my voice, for instance, which like not a lot of medical professionals actually know about it doesn't happen to everyone, it seems, but like on the singing voice in particular, like it can actually make it harder to sing. And, my singing voice is obviously like a huge part of my identity as well. So if I had known that, and I'd also known like the state of my health going in, because like I didn't actually get any labs or medical tests before going on T. I was like prescribed over the phone. So yeah. Um, so I think that I had already like gotten some damage from my eating disorder, like to and from like addictions that I had to like my liver and um, like my heart. I don't know if it was from just tea. I think it was also had to do with binding tightly, but I was having heart palpitations and like liver pains and stuff like that while I was on it. And I think it did have to do with my medical history and, what I had already been through. Like, I don't know if that would have happened if I was healthier, but I wish I would have actually known that, I wish I would have like had a more comprehensive, like at least a physical like exam before being able to start.
Okay, so when I guess I started T, it'll be 6 months ago on Tuesday. When I started, my doctors, so I'm in Boston, and my doctors were like, okay, you know, voice change, hair change, skin texture change, um, bottom growth, blood count change. That's what they told me.
Hmm.
Liver, kidney stuff, because men, go through things differently. Cholesterol change, blood pressure change. You didn't weren't told any of this because I was told this literally day one.
Um,
Because I've heard some people not being told any, like a lot of this stuff. That's why I'm asking.
yeah, my doctor did. So I only talked to her the one time, like over the phone, and she did go over, I think, at least most of those effects with me. But I think like my situation in particular, like I wish I would have known, for instance, like I wish I would have had my liver checked before starting it, or just known like personally what my health was at that point, because obviously the effects will affect different people differently. And I just think the idea that I think it's important for a doctor to fully go over the risks. I don't necessarily feel like she didn't tell me all of that, but it was just,
Sometimes
I
I
think that should be in combination with like actually getting labs done, and knowing if it's right for an individual rather than like, well, this is broadly safe, so it must be safe for like every single person. And like I did tell her that I had an eating disorder, like a severe eating disorder when I was younger, and like that didn't seem to put anything on pause. Like it didn't seem to cause any concern, and like so that was kind of weird to me.
no, that's what I'm saying. That's a kind of an odd thing if you're because like I'm pretty open with my medical history, and we have high blood pressure in my family. Doesn't matter how small you are, or and like so it's something I got to watch out for. And so yeah, I'm getting blood work done a lot. I'm getting blood work again coming up soon, and I feel that if because I know what eating disorders do to the body. Like I said, it's a part of my studies. And honestly, that should have been something that checked. They should have checked your liver, your kidneys, your blood count, your